And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome aboard. I'm National Weather Service Meteorologist Peter Chan with your Alaska Marine Weather Outlook on this Wednesday, April 23rd, 2025. And starting with the state of the sea ice on this Wednesday afternoon, we are seeing that ice eroding along the edges of the pack ice as well as near the main land areas. We've had a number of planias open up, and we expect, at least as of tonight, there's some gustier winds on the south side of St. Lawrence Island. In these opening spots, there could be some heavier freezing spray. The same thing along the area there of the Seward Peninsula along the south shore. But otherwise, we're just going to continue to see a gradual erosion of this ice with the melting that occurs as we head through the spring season, despite the fact, though, that temperatures are going to stay below normal along the west and northern areas of the state. So the melt off will be rather slow compared to maybe in other years where we have warmer conditions. So for late tonight into Thursday morning, we have a persistent area of low pressure here over the Gulf. An occluded front. This front does have some gusty winds and a band of rain that's pushing in through the panhandle along the Gulf Coast. And these areas of rain and rain showers will linger into the day on Thursday. Further west, there is a weakening occluded front associated with the low back toward the western Aleutians. Not an especially strong front, but nevertheless working its way toward the east and northeast. And along the northern fringe, as it encounters the colder air here near St. Matthew, Nunavik Island, along the lower Yukon Kuskokwim deltas, there could be a mix of some wet snow and rain as that system progresses toward that area for Thursday later afternoon and certainly by Thursday night. Meanwhile, the area of low pressure over the Gulf just kind of sits and spins there, and the occluded front presses a little further north and eastward. But otherwise, as I mentioned, just some lingering areas of rain or rain showers along the coast and at sea level, whereas the intercoastal mountains, especially at mid and upper level elevations, could continue to receive some wet accumulating snow. And then, as I mentioned here around Kuskokwim Bay, the lower Yukon Delta, there could be a bit of a mix of precipitation even into the day on Friday as that front and low pressure works its way northward and weakens. And as I mentioned, the overall pattern for these low pressures now through early May is to come up out of the North Pacific, brush the Aleutians or lower Bering. Once in a while, a piece may pull back toward Kuskokwim and Bristol Bays. Otherwise, you either have another one come up from the North Pacific into the Gulf, or there might be some weaker secondary development over the Gulf. So it's going to keep areas along the Gulf Coast, especially the southeast mainland Gulf Coast, into the Panhandle, with wetter than normal conditions here to close out April and into the first week of May. Along areas of the southeast for Thursday, the marine forecast is looking northeast winds there at Petersburg up through Juneau, and we expect waves running 2-3 feet with 15-knot northeast winds. Southeast winds here, Dixon Entrance at 20 knots, waves 4 feet as you get out along the outer coast off of Prince of Wales Island, 8-foot waves. And those south-southeast winds will become more easterly at 20 knots once you get outside of Yakutat Bay and Cape Suckling with 7 to 8 foot waves. On Friday, winds will be south-southeast at 15 to 20 knots for the inner channels, waves generally running a few feet there. For the outer coast, south of the Icy Strait and Gustavus, we're looking at southerly winds 15 knots, waves running right around 5-6 feet, turning more easterly outside of Yakutat Bay and Cape Suckling with 5-foot waves. Winds will be rather light Thursday across Upper Cook Inlet, Prince William Sound. We're looking at variable winds 10 knots, waves 1-2 feet. Outside of Hinchinbrook Entrance, east-northeast winds 15 to 20 knots. And even lower Cook Inlet there, Kennedy Entrance, we're looking at southeast winds 15 knots, waves maybe a few feet. For Friday, continuation of variable winds only around 10 knots here outside of Hinchinbrook Entrance and across Prince William Sound, waves 2 feet within the sound, but maybe 4 or 5 feet out there outside of Hinchinbrook Entrance to Kayak Island. Upper Cook Inlet down to Anchor Point, northeast winds 10 knots, waves a couple of feet. And then easterly winds here, lower Cook Inlet, Kamishak Bay, and northeast of Kodiak Island. East winds 20 knots, waves 5 feet. Winds will be variable to northerly around Kodiak Island on Thursday, 10 to 15 knots. As we drop down across the Alaska Peninsula, look for southeast to east winds 20 knots, becoming more southerly either side at Cold Bay and False Pass. And then on Friday, easterly winds around 20 knots in the vicinity of Kodiak Island down through off of Chicknick. And then winds will generally be more southerly once you get south of Sand Point to False Pass. On the Bering side, winds will turn more southeasterly, 15 to 20 knots. Across the Aleutian chain on Thursday, generally southwest winds the length, 20-25 knot winds over the eastern Aleutians on Alaska through Nikolsky. As we get west of Adak, we could see winds maybe upwards of 30 knots, especially there west of Kiska. And then on Friday, with that area of low pressure continuing eastward, we find winds ahead of it, southerly 20 knots on Alaska, shifting southwest, I should say veering southwesterly Nikolsky, and then they shift to the northwest, Atka, Adak, westward at 20 to 25 knots. Along the southwest coast, including Bristol Bay, Kuskokwim Bay, easterly winds 20 knots. Southerly winds, though, 20 knots there at St. Paul and St. George and Pribilovs. East-northeast flow 15 knots out of Norton Sound along the lower Yukon coast. Winds could be as high as 30 knots in the vicinity of St. Matthew. For Friday, look for variable winds only 10 knots around the Pribilovs, but south-southeast winds Bristol Bay and Kuskokwim Bay to 15 knots, waves just a few feet, and northeast to east winds along and out of Norton Sound and along the Yukon coastline there at 15 knots, and we still have ice there in place, but again, there have been certainly a number of openings from the ice beginning to melt and break up a bit. North side of St. Lawrence Island on Thursday could see northeasterly winds to 25 knots. As we go up through the Chukchi, winds will continue east-northeast, 15 to 20 knots until you get north of Cape Lisburne up through Wainwright. East-northeast winds 25 knots. That'll be the area of some stronger winds. There could be a few higher gusts there off the Lisburne Peninsula. Otherwise, east-northeast winds 15 knots along the Beaufort Sea coast from Utqiagvik to Kaktovik with ice there in place. And then for Friday, those winds are going to pick up along the Beaufort Sea coast, 25 to 30 knots. And with the colder temperatures in place, there could be some blowing snow with those kind of winds. Same thing down here along the northwest Arctic coast or the Chukchi Sea coast there, especially down toward Point Lay, Cape Lisburne. We're looking at east-northeast winds, 25 to 30 knots. And as we drop down through the lower Chukchi Sea, especially south of Point Hope, northeast winds of 15 knots, and then passing through the Bering Strait. The west side of St. Lawrence, or I should say the north side of St. Lawrence Island, the west side of the Seward Peninsula, winds on Friday will be northeasterly at 20 to 25 knots.